Hello and welcome to From Impossible to Inevitable. I am your host, Megan Bauer. Thank you so much for joining me today and pushing play on today's episode. If you are listening in on a podcast platform, hopefully things are sounding better than they have previously. If you are watching me on YouTube, you know instantly it's because I'm holding a microphone. Now, um, the microphone may not stay. I might try other avenues. However, I am on a journey of improving the podcast, and this was the first step I could take. And I will definitely share more about my plans for improvement at the end of the podcast. But in true Megan Bauer fashion, I want to just jump right in. So today's podcast episode comes to you from a conversation I overheard while I was getting some work done at a Starbucks. Now, to be fair, I was like at the front of the building, right by the windows, really far away from the counter where this barista was having this conversation with a customer, this conversation that I overheard. However, I heard a phrase that I always get really excited to hear. And that phrase was, I really want ... And then it was followed by a keyword that I always pay attention to. And that keyword was but. So this barista was talking to this customer and she said, I really want whatever it was, but whatever it was. I don't even remember. What stuck out to me was this phrase and how often we say this phrase or we think this phrase and we don't take the time to really break it down and digest what we're actually saying. Because this phrase you can't take it at face value. You really can't. What comes after the but is always more important than what precedes it. Now, I've got this whole episode on the word but and the psychology behind that word. And I will link that episode in the show notes so you can listen to it because it's one of my favorites. The word but is so interesting. And my friends, whenever I'm out with my friends and they start talking about something, they're like, maybe it's about their kids or whatever. And they're like, I love her, but blah. I'm like, wait, you love her, but? Or do you love her and she's driving you nuts? There's a big difference there. So I'll link that episode because it's really interesting. So whatever comes after the word but is always subconsciously more important than whatever you just said. Now, I love it when people express what they really want. I get really excited. I'm like, let's make it happen. Let's do it. How do we do this? I don't know, but let's figure it out. What do we need to Google? I get pumped. And then the word but shows up. I'm like, okay, we've got some things we need to solve. We've got some things we have to go over. We have some figuring out to do before we actually figure out how to do the thing you want to do. Because something right here is stopping you. Because the word but is like a stop sign. It puts the brakes on. It's like, whoop, no, we're not actually going to go do, create, be, whatever, what we just said, because what's coming next, that's actually the more important thing. Now, it's always because of one of three things. It's either an excuse, it's either a fear, or it's a preference. And we have to deal with each of those three things differently and appropriately. So when it's an excuse, it sounds something like this. I really want to learn how to knit, but I don't know what kind of yarn to use. That's really lame. That's a really lame excuse. That is a Google search and a trip to the yarn store away. Like, that's a lame excuse. All you have to do is start asking questions and somebody will answer you, especially if you just go down to a local yarn store and just start asking questions. They will help you. They will get you set up. You can learn how to knit. There you go. You're welcome. Excuses always sound lame. They're also the I don't have time excuse, because really, I don't have time just means I don't want to make time. This isn't important enough. I have other things that are way more important than whatever this is. And excuses just always sound pretty lame. So sometimes you have to debunk them. You're like, okay, acknowledge it's an excuse. And you're just like, this is an excuse. What am I actually saying? Do I actually want to learn how to knit? Or am I afraid? Am I scared to go to the yarn store and reveal myself as the novice I am? Sometimes that's a fear. You don't want to know. We don't want to give away what you don't know. But that's silly because no one cares. And that's the truth of it. No one cares. Just go ask questions and think about it from the other person's point of view. If this is you want to do something, but you don't know how. Think about it from the other person's point of view. If you were the person who knew all things knitting, you knew all things yarn, and somebody came in and was like, I'd love to start doing this. I don't know. Can you help me out? How fun is that to introduce this person, to give your knowledge, to help them, to get them set up? How freaking fun, right? Right? I love it when graphic design or when a graphic design clients come to me and they're like, look, I need a logo, but I have no idea what I want this thing to look like. And I look at their intake form and I'm like, I got you, because you might think that there's nothing cohesive in all of this, but I see it. I see it, and we're going to come up with something that you love. It's okay that you don't know, because I know and I'm excited about it, and I'm going to show you what we mean. So think about it from that point of view. You're going to make somebody's day by going in and asking questions and being sincere. It's okay that you're new. Okay. So when you're dealing with that fear, just let yourself be new. Let yourself be bad at it. It's fine. Really? If I was unwilling to start asking questions about how to run a podcast, we wouldn't be at episode 90. If I was unwilling to try it because I was going to be bad at it, we wouldn't be here. But we are, because I was willing to ask questions and be bad at it. So there you go. And just now, I feel like I'm ready for some real improvements. So it takes time. It's all a progress. Okay, so there are other fears. There are uglier fears. There are limiting beliefs that are masking around as fears, and you have to get down to those as well. The best way to do this, honestly, is by journaling. If you write out, okay, I really want to do this, but I'm scared of this, and this. And then take the time, truly take the time to dig in why those things are freaking you out. And it gets deep, it gets vulnerable. You'll see things about yourself that you don't like. You will acknowledge beliefs that you would never want a loved one to hold about themselves. And it's not super fun. I'm just going to tell you, it's not. But when you look at these things, when you look at these fears, especially these limiting beliefs, straight in the face, and you're just like, this isn't even true. This isn't even true. It's so powerful. And before you tell me, but Megan, these things are true. I've got a truckload of evidence that says I am bad at finishing things. I've got all of these situations. I've got all of these experiences and circumstances that tell me I am bad at follow through. So, of course, that's a fear of mine that I won't follow through because I've got all this to back it up. Okay. I want you to consider, though, all the times you did follow through. Remember, your brain looks for what you tell it to look for. So if you are telling your brain to find all the evidence that you are bad at follow through, your brain's going to follow through. It's going to do it. It's going to bring up every single situation, big, small, and insignificant. It will show you. Remember that one time when you were 6 years old and you were going to make a pie with your grandma, but you bailed? Really? Not helpful. Not helpful. If you tell your brain, okay, look, follow through is something I am working on. It is something that I am becoming better at. Please show me all the instances in which I have successfully completed this, which I have followed through, which I have made it to the end of a project, a task, whatever it is. And then your brain's going to do something like this. Well, I guess you put away all the laundry. And you're going to be like, that doesn't count. Wrong. It counts. Because your brain was telling you that the pie that you bailed on with your grandma when you were 6 counts. You completing the laundry yesterday counts. And start making tallies. You will start with some pretty insignificant situations and some pretty insignificant circumstances. And then you will find ones that are more significant. And as you start tallying these things to disprove this limiting belief, you will find that you have actually a lot of experience following through. Remember, this follow through is just an example. Whatever limiting belief you come headlong against, you have situations, experiences that disprove it. You just have to look for them. And then you just have to cultivate them. You're like, look, I feel like I'm really bad at follow through here. So I'm going to create situations in which I can build up this muscle and start small. Be like, okay, I'm going to make dinner tonight. Make dinner. Look, you followed through. We're eating dinner. You know, whatever it is that feels right to you to help you build the real belief in yourself that does not limit you. Work through this in your journal. When you see it in black and white and you don't have all of the busyness in your head, it will sit so much deeper in you. You'll see the ugliness of the limiting belief, and then you'll feel the relief of releasing that limiting belief and embracing the actual truth that empowers you, that encourages you. This is hard. I'm not going to lie. It is hard. It is not super fun. It is very vulnerable. I have been in the process of this in the last 2 or 3 weeks, working through limiting beliefs and ugly things that I would never want my daughters to believe about themselves. However, it's also not true for me either. So this is me on the road with you, being completely honest. It's not fun. It is worth it. And you can do it. Take time, take a bath, whatever it is you got to do to work through it. And allow yourself to see yourself in a better light, in a light that is more true. And if you don't feel like it's more true, then why don't you settle into the thought of it's just as true? Okay? And you can lean into that. Okay, so there's fears. Deal with fears, journal through them, look for evidence to the contrary. You got it. It's hard. You got it. The last one is preferences. So just to recap, because I spoke a lot about fears, we have excuses, we have fears, now we have preferences. Preferences is actually my favorite one because it's so freeing. Now, here's a great one for preferences. This is a true one from my heart. I really want to live in London, but I don't want to uproot my family. And that is a preference. I could figure it out if I really wanted, there's a lot to it, and that's really overwhelming. However, I don't really want to at this moment. I don't. I don't think that the instability of moving to another country just randomly would be good for my girls. They are very happy. They are very settled. They are focused on what they should be focused on, and that is learning and learning how to be friends and figuring out who they are. And throwing them into another country isn't the best at this moment. Now, this can change. When my girls are all graduated and out of the house, then I might say something differently. I might say, so I really want to move to London, but I'm scared out of my mind. And then I've got other work to work through. But right now, it's a preference. And I'm okay with that preference because that's actually what I want. That I'm living what I want. And that is really freeing. So when you can look at that phrase and you're like, no, that's a preference. This is actually pretty accurate. Then there's nothing else to do because you're doing great. The problem is when it's an excuse or a fear. Now, I have come up with 3 journaling questions that I will put in the show notes to help you work through your excuses and your fears around this phrase specifically. And I'm going to try, as part of my improvements of the podcast, to include journaling questions because I feel like so much of this that we talk about is introspective work and noticing your thoughts, noticing your feelings, noticing what you're doing. And those things become so much more clear when you are writing about them and you have a record and you can see your progress or you can see yourself work through things. And I really think that would be a great value add to the podcast. Another thing that I'm going to do, it is not ready as of this recording and this release date, is I am working on a web page to host show notes and all of that so that you can look for things in an easier fashion and where I can keep resources and things like that I mentioned on the podcast, a list of books, all of those things. I will create a home for all of that. That is in progress. And I'm working on sound quality, obviously. And then probably in the near-ish future, I will be working on the visuals of the podcast as well. However, sound quality and having a website, a web page, a home for the podcast, other than wherever it is that you listen to it, will be great as well. And it's going to take me a while to do all the back cataloging, of course. So we will start with 90 and move forward, and I will add the backlog as we go. Now, I have previously been doing mostly just a summary or kind of a teaser of the podcast in, the, what's it called? Like the show notes section of podcast apps as well as on YouTube. And I intend on being more bullet point-ish about it. So it's like talking about this, and I'm talking about this, and I'm talking about this. And instead of just an overall overview summary. So things are getting a facelift. My whole business is kind of getting a facelift. I'm going through a rebrand right now, which is a really interesting process. And it's exciting and it's good and it's all going to take time. So please pardon my metaphorical dust as I work through this. I appreciate you listening in, being a part of this journey, as messy as it's been. I always take the stance of just do it and do it messy if you have to, but just get started, because then once you get started, you have that ability to have this really beautiful transformation. But if you never get started because it's not perfect, you'll never have the beautiful transformation. So I do my best to just put aside the imperfections, do the best that I can. Absolutely. I've always done the best that I could, knowing it's not perfect. And It never will be perfect. Don't expect perfection at the end of this. Just expect a more polished version of what we've got here. A little bit more polished. It's a work in progress. Okay. Grace always. So that's what we've got. So thank you again for joining me. I went on that whole improvements bit and now I don't know what to say. I feel so shy. Okay. Thank you again for joining me today. I appreciate you. I send you love. Until next time. Bye for now.